Ladies and gentlemen, we have Andy Sum, who heads up Jigsaw, an Australian developer, and my friend Matt Hall, who is a one-man band of game development at ClickTalk. And they're here to tell you how, without $1 spent in marketing money, Crossy Road was able to climb to #1. Ladies and gentlemen, Andy Sum and Matt Hall.
Thanks everyone. So yeah, I'm Matt Hall. As you said, I run a one-man band company called ClickTalk. And then Andy and I decided to get together and form a little company called Hipster Whale, and this is the logo here. Andy will tell a bit more about himself.
So I'm Andy Sum, and I run a one-man band shop as well called Jigsaw, and I've got a couple of games on PC, and I also do game jams every now and then.
Yeah, and Ben Weatherall, who's not here with us today, he was the artist on Crossy Road. Yep.
So have you all heard of Crossy Road? Yeah. If you haven't, these are some screenshots of the game. It's an endless hopper. So today we're going to be talking about how we made Crossy Road in 12 weeks. We're going to be talking about how we came up with the idea, some of the key moments in the development process, and also how me and Matt work together.
And we'll be talking a little bit about subverting free-to-play at the end. So this was the core idea. We wanted to make the next Flappy Bird. I mean, sort of what does that mean, and why is Flappy Bird so popular? So I mean, we could dissect for hours about why Flappy Bird was so popular. But the thing for us is there was the purity in gameplay and a high score system that couldn't be cheated. I mean, if you wanted to be good at Flappy Bird, you had to sit there for hours and hours and just start to get into the zone. And when you shared your score with people, they knew that you were good. And we wanted that was the core thing. We wanted to put that in our game. The other thing that Flappy Bird was very popular, it was with YouTubers. It had a really unusual viral ascension. It sort of started when PewDiePie covered it, and then there was all these bad, hilarious reviews. People thought it was a cool thing to leave a really funny review for Flappy Bird, and they had an astounding number of reviews. And it was a big schoolyard game, like everyone was saying. Have you played Flappy Bird? What's your high score? Yep. And for us, making the next Flappy Bird did not mean making a clone. I mean, after Flappy Bird was released, it was just flooded. The App Store was flooded with people trying to ride on its coattails, and especially once Dong took the game off the store, it was all in. It was crazy, absolutely crazy. So when we say next Flappy Bird, the idea was to create a phenomenon like Flappy Bird, but not Flappy Bird itself. So when Flappy Bird was around, I was like, okay, I want to make one of these. And I just kept the idea in my head. And then eventually in the shower one day, I was like, how about a Flappy Bird crossed with Frogger? And that seemed like a pretty good idea to me. And then I called Andy up.
Yeah, and I said I'd actually been working on something like that a few years ago. So Matt approached me with this idea, and I said, hey, check out this thing I made in 2011. I was working on an endless Frogger game, the same kind of thing in 2D, and it was called Chicken Dash. It was 2D, it looked like this, it had some of the same elements that Crossy Road has, procedurally generated, trains, logs, cars, lily pads, but it wasn't very good at all. It had on-screen buttons.
Really good art.
Yeah, 2D art.
Yep.
So after chatting with Matt for a bit and showing him this early ancient game, I started a little prototype. I got to work on that. I spent a couple of weeks doing the initial movements and showing Matt, getting feedback.
Yeah.
And as we went along, I eventually showed a few friends, and they wouldn't give me my phone back, so it was a tick towards it actually being something fun at that point. And we only had one character then. I think it was a chicken then.
It was a frog first, because we had a frog lying. I had a frog lying around from a previous game.
Threw that in.
Yep. So when we started the game, we always knew we wanted it to be free, and we wanted it to be popular, and that was the driving force behind the game. We didn't talk about money or trying to figure out how we could extract money from people until probably 4 to 6 weeks into development. We just sat down one day and hammered it out over a day. We wanted to make something that was going to be popular, and anything else that got in the way of that popular goal was given the axe. we thought, well, if we can make it popular, then we can. If it's really popular but no one's ever paying anything for it, maybe we can tweak it a little bit later. But it was always 100% going to be a free game. So, as you saw in the previous slide, Andy started out with a 2D game, and I actually had to fight with Andy quite a bit to get him to realise that probably shouldn't look like that,
Yeah,
because it was never going to be popular. So I'd worked with Ben Weatherall before on a game called Deck War, and then again on 70 FPS, like a first-person shooter that we did with voxel art. And Ben continued to do voxel art throughout all the year, was posting to Twitter these cool animals, and so that's what I wanted to do. I knew we could make voxels stylish and appley, but I was adamant that we could do funny voxel art, which seemed like that's a pretty weird thing to say, that voxels can be funny. But I just had this idea of, get them squished into a car and get them run over or bumped into the side of a truck. And yeah, you can see here, that's the early prototype art that I knocked up there on the left with one of Ben's old frogs in there. And then on the right was essentially Ben's probably second pass there, where he came up with a color scheme we didn't quite like, so we fiddled with it. But that's very early on, like probably 2 weeks in, 2 or 3 weeks in, it looked like that.
Okay.
Yep.
So, bring across web, what really Animal Jam.
So we were both, sorry.
Sorry, I'll go, yep. Sorry, we were
So,
both independent developers,
Adventures, there's
and
mini
we
games,
tended to do everything
there's world
ourselves.
building,
And so
One
we had to
mobile
sort of find middle
be-
ground where Andy and I could both work together. But like, having worked solo for so long, how do two people come together and not want to kill each other? And that actually went really well. Like, Andy and I turned out to be really similar people.
kids game.
And we had largely the same ideas, and whenever we had a new idea, we'd put it in the game and test it and see how it felt. And sometimes we'd have to say, I'm going to put this in today. Don't say anything now. Come back in 2 days before you give your knee-jerk judgment. And that worked really well for both of us. Yeah.
During the whole development process, me and Matt never met up. Matt actually lives in the country, and
But-
I live closer to the city,
Yeah.
so we're about 2 hours apart. We did all our development over Skype, having Skype
Complete-
calls every day, and then
Yeah.
we shared code.
We didn't video chat either.
No.
We didn't even look at each other for 3 months.
Well, I didn't have a
Fantastic
webcam,
creative
so
breakthrough.
Yeah.
This is potential for
looked at you.
deep social play, but and this might come as
so
a shock to those of you
like
who haven't
Flappy
played
Bird,
it.
we started
Some of them are
with
not for kids.
one-tap game,
Minecraft.
and we felt that was the most direct
you have
route to
Minecraft
the kind of
server that
ideas
is
we were
not-
playing with. It worked early on. We had tap to go forward,
What
and
I'm
that was
talking
it.
about. It's,
but
it
it
is
felt
not moderated
artificial
or filtered like a
because
kid's game.
you couldn't move.
It is not.
It felt artificial not
all
to be able to move left and right
your kids-
when you had this free space
However,
around you. And we also had this added problem of logs, so you jump on a log and you
playground.
move a bit off this path and get back on, so it didn't work. And then we tried swiping controls, so we said, what happens if you swipe left and right? Is that going to make things better? And that was good to control, but it was also really tiring. It was really tiring to swipe left to right all the time. So then me and Matt were chatting about it a lot, and as Matt said, he put the swipe
compared-
controls in and said, Andy, don't touch this for a couple of days and see how it goes. And pretty soon after
That
that, I
worked?
felt like it was a really good change for
The
the game.
social. It's about.
So Zelda the Minish Cap was a big inspiration for the prize machine. I was addicted to Zelda the Minish Cap, collecting those stupid trophies for hours it took me. But it sort of just reminded me how cool it is to try and complete a collection, and that was what we wanted to do. Like, most other free-to-play games might have, like, some characters are better than others, but we didn't follow that path here, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. Yep.
So we had this idea for lots of different characters, and we were thinking, how do you unlock them? So we went through 3 different virtual currencies right at the start. We thought XP, coins, medals for completing daily quests, and after all that, we chatted about it a lot. I think we had a 2-hour session trying to work out the best way for that, and yeah, we just decided that
We didn't need them at all.
we didn't need them at this stage. So I was playing a lot of Dota 2 and Heroes of the Storm at the time, and for me they're interesting because they stay competitive since you can't buy anything that affects the gameplay. You can only buy cosmetic items. So for me, that was a really interesting bit of inspiration, and players are still willing to pay money for new characters and things like that.
Yeah, and as you said, after we scrapped the virtual currency idea, we had this long conversation, and at the end of that, we said, well, why don't we just sell all the characters for $1? And that seemed like a really good idea. I mean, I've never paid for virtual currency in a game in my entire life, and I wanted to make the game friendly to children, and I would never buy virtual currency for my children because I want them to understand value, but I would probably spend hundreds of dollars on Skylanders, for example. And so Skylanders was a big influence for me because even if we were trying to make the characters, initially we only had art for them, and then we tried to make them meaningful by giving them unusual and interesting effects, even if it didn't affect the gameplay. But innovating here with the unique characters, I think really paid off. Yeah. And so the game is a mix of in-app purchases as well as ads. And Disco Zoo, have you all played Disco Zoo? Yeah, so Disco Zoo had these brilliantly integrated incentivized advertising, and Matt and Owen and the developers were very generous early on, giving us numbers of exactly how much they made during their launch week. And I looked at that and went, well, I can build a business off of that. And that was around the same time as Flappy Bird. So in April, I was just marinating that idea for 6 months until I figured out, well, we want to have ads in this. That's a good way of doing it. Yeah. So yeah, without Disco Zoo, we never would have made this game. Yeah. And the other big success in the system outside of the core gameplay was the banner system. So at the end of the game, there's essentially 3 banner slots that can pop up. We'd have all different sort of information. And it's like interstitial advertising that no one actually has to click and close. So there's always opportunities like, okay, now you can watch an ad, and you haven't seen an opportunity to watch an ad for a while, and so players click them and watch the ad and get cool coins and stuff like that, and really like it. And as well as the fact that the banners are irregular, like you can play the game and not even have one, and so people tend not to. If you see an ad over and over again, your mind will actually ignore it. And we wanted to make these fun, so there's sharing opportunities. There's you can trial new characters. I spent about a month on this system, and then we continued to improve it later, and that was one of the big successes of the game. So I was chatting with Christine Chen, who's an ex-PopCap employee at around about the same time I met Andy. She was a monetization expert, and we were just having a casual conversation. She said to me, "What's the most important feature in a successful free-to-play game?" So I went, virality. And she went, "No, it's retention." And that simple exchange stuck in my head throughout the entire year, and I was trying to figure out, well, which is better? Why did I say that? Why was I right? Why was I wrong? And in the end, I concluded that Christine was 100% correct. If people aren't going to come back and play your free-to-play game tomorrow, you're dead in the water. But what I was right too, in that retention actually and virality multiply one another. So the longer people play your game, the more opportunities they have to share, and the more they want to share the game because it's cool, the more people can come in and discover the game and play for a long time. And this was the key for our game succeeding on 100% organic traffic. Yep.
So when we launched the game, we had various Apple features, strong press coverage, and YouTubers such as PewDiePie covered the game. And the downloads kept growing.
That's the basic timeline.
Yeah, these are the dates. So it took 12 weeks to develop. We formed Hipster Whale in September, and we had about a month between submitting and releasing. And this is how we went. So Apple gave us great worldwide features, which helped propel us to #1 all around the world in the free charts.
Well, we've stayed there, sort of.
Yeah, we've hovered pretty high in the charts.
Yep. So we got.
Yeah. So now we'd like to talk about
in 4 minutes.
A risky approach to free-to-play. So because this was a 12-week project, we were okay to fail because we hadn't spent that much time in it overall, and it kind of gave us the confidence to experiment with established paradigms in free-to-play. So one of the first things we did was, you can't buy virtual currency in the game. It would be easy for us to put a coin pack in there, but you can understand value when you can't buy any coins.
We'd probably make more money if we did it that way, but we don't want to. Yeah.
And all the characters in the game play the same. So as we said, this keeps it competitive. In many other games with multiple characters, it means that there's a best character usually, which doubles your score or something like that. So in Crossy Road, we make this about playing the character that you like best and the one you can identify with.
So people shared. They would automatically say, "Well, the unicorn, that's my favorite character," and they would play with that one and share with it, and would really drive to trying to win that character. Yeah.
So in Crossy Road, when you get hit by a car, that's it. You have to try again. The only way to beat your high score is to get better at the game. There's no save me button. You can't.
We have a lot of requests for a save me button too, and it's just no, we're not going to do that. We also have no energy system. That's generally what people tell you to do. If you let people eat the whole cake, they won't eat any more. But with Crossy Road, we've found people play for 6 hours and then come back tomorrow. It's a case of the game being good enough to get over that hump. Now we do have these gifts that come every 6 hours, which sort of acts like a faux energy system, but it doesn't stop people from playing at all. It's just come back later and you can get a free character or a chance at a free character. Yep. As I said before, the banner system was designed so we didn't have to have any interstitials. Retention was 100% the most important thing, and we didn't want an ad banner popping up at the end of the game and taking people out of it. And that worked really, really well. We got a lot of attention for doing that. Yeah.
So because we've got this character system that allows us to create characters and new content really quickly, we can afford to give things away for free. So we give away lots of characters really early on, and players love that, and they reward us by leaving good reviews and telling people about the game as well.
Yeah.
So the result of this, and the last couple of months of the game being out, we've got 30 million downloads worldwide. We're in the top 50 to 100 grossing all around the world. And in the first 2 weeks of Google Play's release, we have 1 million 5-star reviews.
That's out of 10 million. So 1 in 10 people are essentially leaving a 5-star review. It's quite crazy. Yeah. So what we wanted to do is inspire people to mess around with free to play. You don't have to follow these paradigms, as the previous talk said. You can do whatever you feel like. Mess with the systems, and people really appreciate it, and will talk about your game and share it with their friends. People want to see new things. Yep. And we just made it in time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent talk, gentlemen. Any questions from the floor?
Where's the chicken, Andy?
Gabby of Altitude Games.
Hey guys, excellent game. So what would you say is your revenue split between outright purchases and advertising?
Sorry, I can't give it. We're going to talk more about our income in. We're going to essentially put together a reveal all package in about a month's time. So we're not going to reveal anything about that. Sorry about that. Yeah. Any other questions that aren't to do with revenue?
I saw that you guys implemented EveryPlay, and I wanted to know how that worked out for you guys. Did you guys get a lot of more extra downloads through EveryPlay, or did it impact the virality a lot?
Yeah,
or not?
it's hard to quantify, but we had how many players were there? 270,000 people. 500,000 now, is it? Videos now. Yeah, like people are absolutely playing it and uploading it to EveryPlay, and of course we've been bugging EveryPlay to put in really good YouTube functionality as well, which they've just they've just put it there a few days ago. So we're really looking forward to seeing how that goes. People can finally be PewDiePie in their own bedroom. Yep.
Hey, Yusuf from Unity / EveryPlay and so on.
Yes, thank you.
The one thing I would love to see in the game is a more deep multiplayer, because the score actually lies. Every level is procedurally generated, so I actually don't know if I was that much better than my friends, because I can directly compare. I'd love to see ghost races or a challenge mode. And I know there's been a forum where we all asked about it, so I really want to ask in front of everybody. We want multiplayer. I want to beat Scott.
We've been talking about that since the very beginning, but Crossy Road was essentially a minimum viable product. We cut a lot of stuff Yeah, but that's all there. It's still in Trello. One day it'll be moved.
I think the one advice I gave the guy who made Hill Climb Racing, he was thinking about doing version 2, and told me never ever do that. Keep your game going forever. And well, he's buying Ferraris, so he's done pretty well out of that.
I don't want to buy a Ferrari.
So, are you thinking to keep the game simple forever, or do you plan to add new features just like that to keep new content fresh?
So we're going to keep adding lots of new characters, probably about 10 or 15 each month, and try and keep them interesting. So we did an Australia update recently, and that got a lot of traction with players. They really enjoyed the new characters and world and things like that. And we've got some other big features that we want to do. Yeah, and some characters changed the will.
Do you think it's
will
okay
change
to
the game.
add new features that change gameplay?
Through characters. So a character might have a new game mode attached to it. So then you can play this character and you can speed run, for example. That's what we're going to do.
The gentleman in the blue shirt is dying to ask a question.
Thank you.
Calm down, dude. Microphone's coming.
Thank you. My question was sort of asked already, but I have another question. So, like you have a sort of new take on free-to-play, sort of. If you would make a new game, would you try to reuse this model or come up with something completely new? Because you see that models, like, they become popular and they drop down afterwards.
It's a very good
quickly.
question. So we made Crossy Road to absolve ourselves of ever having to make a game like this ever again. We're really interested in creating new things. Like Andy and I are both artists. Is that a bad word? Arty. We lean more towards the indie side of the fence with the sort of games we make and play. And we talked just days after, like once everything was going really well. It's like, should we scale and become like a business? And we quickly decided, nope. We're just going to pocket it, and then we make cool stuff for the rest of our lives, hopefully. Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen,
good to hear.
Andy and Matt will be back here by Rachel. Wave your hand, Rachel, to answer any more questions you might have and greet their adoring fans. Let's all give it up for Andy Sum and Matt Hall. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.